little bit differently tonight. I'm going to introduce the host, and then the host is going to introduce the headliner. The reason why I'm introducing the host is because he doesn't, well, he blows his own horn, but not, y'all know what I'm saying. Anyway, he's an educator, he's a fine player, arranger, and more important than all of those, he's a good friend. And while everybody else is trying to figure out how to scale back, Hanif and people like Hanif keep places like this doing stuff like this for people like us. So I'd like you all to give Hanif Nelson a big round of applause.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So I'm very, very pleased tonight because our band leader is a very well-known musician and educator, very well-known person, and just a fantastic human being. So we get the pleasure of having him here at Black Eyed Sally's tonight, which, by the way, is sponsored by Black Eyed Sally's and the Hartford Jazz Society. And I am very, very happy to introduce to all of you, for some of you the first time, for others of you, you've seen them many times over. This is Mr. Emery Smith and the Emery Smith team.
Thank you very much. Where's my two nieces? Where are they? Oh, okay.
Three nieces.
Three? Yeah, well, oh my goodness. They all over the place. Yeah, I remember when they were babies. Oh, Pam. You know how to change the diapers? Your mother told me how to. On Sandwich Street. last chord was showed to me by a guy named Thelonious. That was back in 1947. A lot of you guys were even alive.
Play something Jim knows.
Here's a tune that was sung by Hatter Brooks in a motion picture back in 1950 with Humphrey Bogart. She stole the scene. She was a great singer and a great piano player. And it's called I Hadn't Anyone Till You. What I told my old lady this morning. After over 60 years of being together.
Yeah.
I saw a guy named William Clarence Eckstein, 1944. His name was Billy Eckstein. He had a big band. That was a fabulous band. I was, I don't know, 13 years. But anyway, was at right up here at the Foot God Hall. And in that band was Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker. Diz I knew. And Art Blakey was in the band. And, Dexter Gordon. Jughead was in the band, Jane Armand. And Sarah Vaughan was in the band. Billy Eckstein wrote a song. It was a tune called I Want to Talk About You. Great song, and he was a great singer. Jerry Valentine was the arranger. He was also he also played trombone. So I'm going to play this tune for you. It's called I Want to Talk About You. Billy Eckstein. Billy was from Pittsburgh. I want to talk about you, Billy Eckstein. Billy Eckstein was a great guy. He discovered Sarah Vaughan. He worked with Earl Hines. Oh man, he had a great voice. Had all the gals running after him.
While we're here, I just want to point out there's a lot of young folks going after the music, and that's really cool to see. I just want to make sure we mention some of the folks that you need to know about who are doing it right from here. This is one of them. This is Mr. Emery Austin Smith, and when I got started playing jazz, there were some folks that, kind of smacked us around a little bit, made sure we did the right thing. Names you need to know, like bassist Earl Warmack. You need to know that name. You need to know that name, Earl Warmack. You need to know sax player, alto sax player Harold Holt. You need to know that name. Some of the people he mentioned, Harold Kibbe Holt. Now check this out. Ahmad Jamal and Art Blakey were in Harold Holt's band back in Pittsburgh. And Harold came here and settled in Hartford, did his thing for a long time. You need to know about Eddie Davis. You need to know about Eddie Davis. And there's someone here tonight that, okay, so I told Emery, hey man, I want to play this music. He said, okay, I want you to have a drum set by June, because I didn't have my own drum set. I used to go over his house and play his son's drum set. A lefty. And so June came and I didn't have my drum set yet, but when September came, I had my drum set. And I said, hey, Mr. Smith, I was still calling him Mr. Smith. He said, all right, I'll get back to you. And about 2 days later, I get a phone call from a female vocalist here in town. I didn't know who she was, but she gave me a call and she said, yeah, Emery told me to call you and do a gig with me. And I thought Emery was going to be on the gig, but there was a piano player who looked just like Dizzy Gillespie. His name was Norman Macklin. You gotta know Norman Macklin. He actually played trumpet and they made him move to piano. Norman Paul Macklin. You need to know Duke Moorhead. You need to know Duke Moorhead. So you young folks, guys who are still in college, whatever, check those names. You won't find them in the history books, but if you talk to people who've been around Hartford any length of time, but there's somebody sitting in the audience. The first jazz vocal gig I was ever on was right at Honest Oyster House. Used to be over here in the hotel. Yeah, and we used to play upstairs, and I just need you to give a big round of applause to my good friend, Gloria Haynes Brown. I told Smitty I wanted to play, and they called me, and we worked. Oh man, we worked, but I carried the PA and the Fender Rhodes piano up to my third floor apartment after every gig. So I just wanted to mention that to you because those of you who've been around, you guys know who Smitty is. Those of you who are here in town because you're going to school here or you're studying from some of our other greats, you might be studying from Hanif, you might be studying from Steve Davis or Javon Jackson or Nat Reeves. You might have played under Donnie DePalma and a host of other fantastic players getting it done from right here. But there are the folks that you didn't know about because you haven't been here that long. But if they didn't do what they did, I wouldn't have been able to do what I do. And then you wouldn't know about people like Steve Davis, Nat Reeves, Oris Jenkins, you know, people like that. So I just wanted to mention that too. Yeah, that's my man right there. That's right. So y'all give it up one more time for the professor, Mr. Emery Austin Smith.
Hey, Horace Lee Jenkins. Horace Lee. That's my brother's grandson. Here's a tune that I'm going to play. Ray Noble. English, kitty. Ray Noble. That's George Kirk.
The same thing, but different.
Same thing.
Hey.
Listen to Jim Hunter on the bass. Listen to Jim. Go ahead, Jim. Malcolm Benjamin Parker on the drums and Jim Hunter on the bass. Stand up, take a bow. It looks like, my younger day, I was a pretty good baseball player. This was a long time ago. We used to play against a bunch of guys in the House of David. They all had beards, so every time I look at it, I mean long beards, the House of David, and they didn't cuss or swear. I did all.
Y'all give it up one more time. Mr. Emery
Thank you. This is a tune I heard when I was very small, in the 30s. I was a very small child, and it made me cry. I know I did. My mother said, it's just your emotion. I didn't know that. She didn't know either. But it's called Isn't It Romantic? And I heard this tune. I was a little kid, and it was, it still gets me. Now, if I break down God crying,
oh, you're not gonna cry.
the nieces and nephews don't tell you.
When the last time you cried?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Hartford's Got Jazz. I am your host, Hanif Nelson, and we're here live at Black Eye Salad as usual, and our guest tonight is Mr. Emery Austin Smith. For those of you that don't know, Mr. Smith is a very, very well-known and respected jazz pianist and educator, and he's been around this area for a long time, but he's also seen a lot of the greats of this music, the legends that have been the foundation of what we play today. And so it's a pleasure for us to have him here at Black Eyed Sally's tonight. You know, Mr. Smith, how did you get your start playing jazz?
Oh, I always heard it. Even when I was a kid in the 30s, we had my parents had all the Fats Waller records, the Earl Hines and Art Tatum, and the early Count Basie when he was with Decca Records, the late 30s. Jimmy Lunsford was a great fan of mine, and then when I heard Louis Jordan, because Chick Webb's band, Chick died so young, but his band, we had the records, his recordings of his band. And there was so many, the music was so great, I didn't want to go to school in the morning. I mean, we had all those records, we had the wind-up thing, Graphenol or Victrola, whatever you call it. And then they had a lot of music on the radio. WTIC had a live orchestra. They used to play every day at noontime, and they had a couple of orchestras, and they had music all over the place. So I was surrounded by music and didn't really know, like when it was jazz, per se, we just knew it was music. They referred to the swing music because that was the term they were using today. And you had Benny Goodman and Fletcher Henderson, who actually did all those famous arranging techniques for that band. And so that was always around me. That's all I ever heard. That was my narcotic. That was my booze, man. I was high the whole time. I went through school, and it was kind of tough too because most of the kids didn't. I can remember one time my second oldest brother Arthur. He had been in CCC camp. He went like in '34, and he was gone for 2 years. He come back in '36. I didn't know who he was. I was so small, and he had the uniform on. So a few days later, he came to the house and picked me up and took me up to Henry Williams Barbershop on North Main Street near Pavilion Street in Hartford. And there was Fats Waller. I knew we had those Fats. In fact, I didn't call him Fats Waller. I called him Fats Wallace. I didn't know. And there was Fats in there jiving, drinking. I didn't know. He was sent out to Ben Rosenfield's drugstore to get me a Dixie cup, and he said, "You're going to have?" He said, "No, I got my medicine." He's taking his medicine. Well, he was drinking gin or something. I don't know. He was, So when I got home, I said to my mother, "I met Fats Wallace, and he had a bad cold, man." She said, "How'd you know?" He was taking a lot of medicine. She said, "Yeah, he was sick, okay." But the music was all around, and even Gershwin, before he died, me and my mother used to listen every Friday night. We used to listen to music by Gershwin on the Fleischmann Hour. Fleischmann was the name of a company. They're also a booze, but Fleischmann's Yeast. So it was Gershwin playing, and he was improvising, great improviser. So that whole thing was always music. That's all I ever heard. That's all I've ever wanted to do was be a musician. And I played with a lot of different guys, at one time or another. And I knew the business, the money thing wasn't cool with the recordings, because I turned down many recordings because they wouldn't. Only because a guy like Gigi Grice came here in 1945, 46, I guess it was. He went to Boston Conservatory, and his sister was living here in Hartford. I'm talking kind of fast because I know you don't have all night. And he sat down and told me about controlling your own music. He taught Horace Silver about how to control your own music. And consequently, I turned down a lot of, everybody said, "Man, don't you want to get recorded?" I said, "No, not if they're going to not pay me for it, or give me something, 2 cents on every recording sold," but they wouldn't do it. And they wanted, and I had some original tunes. They wanted to put it through their publishing company. I said, "No, I got my own publishing company. It's called Nitsua." That's Austin spelled backwards. But I didn't care because I knew I was always going to play somewhere. I played with a lot of guys. I remember I lived in New York, when I was in the Army, and I was in New York, and I was playing at a place called the Safari on 8th Avenue and 137th Street. That's in Harlem. And the whole band was a junk band. Everybody, I won't call no names because they were from uptown, and they were all junkies. I was the only one. I remember the place got raided, and the guy from the police station says, "Well, I know you're not a junkie. You know, I know you. I see you around. You're not. You know." So he took the whole band down. But I had no use for booze because it got in the way of me living. I kind of liked myself, so I didn't want to get caught out. I didn't want to get caught out there. And that jailhouse thing is not good. After talking to several guys, you know, about what happened in jail and how they're treated, and then after you come out of jail, you know, after you pay your debt to society, you're not forgiven. You got that for the rest of your life, you know. So music has always been the whole thing. And I mean, when I say music, I mean the whole thing now. I don't mean not just jazz. I had a brother, you know, Horace Jenkins. Well, his grandfather, my brother, he was 14 years older than me. He used to sit me down every Saturday to listen to Ben Grauer from the New York Mets. I don't know. He made me sit there and listen to this. And finally, I began to appreciate it. When I listen to classical music in the morning from Springfield or WFCR out of Amherst, and I hear things that I heard, you know, 80 years ago, you know, and it makes sense, you know, and so I never had a bad thought about European music, or Bach or Beethoven or Franz Liszt or anything. In fact, I studied their music and I studied their lives, and that was a big help, you know. You know, like now I play in a church on Sundays up in Stafford, Connecticut. It's a Baptist church, the Stafford Baptist Church, and I'm reading those hymns and reorganizing those hymns from the old way of playing, you know. And it's a real treat. I mean, I'm really serious about it. It's not a joke, you know. It's not. It's not a funny. It's an experience to sit there and play music and then look at it and then reorganize it as you play. And it sounds different, even though they know the song and they sing the song, and it's an old Baptist church, but it's great, and it's a music experience that I look forward to every Sunday. Any other questions? I don't know.
No, sir. Thank you very much for sitting down in this interview and for playing some live music for us. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll be back with another show next week.